Hey, comic book collectors, do you want to protect what you collect? Do you hate when your comic books slide around in your short box, or you need to turn them sideways just so they don't bend or fall over? Well, look no further than Sidekick Supplies. Their product fits firmly inside your comic box, so you don't need to worry. And not only is their product made in the USA, but also ships free directly to your doorstep. Check out our sponsor, Sidekick Supplies, at sidekicksupplies.com and use the code Comic-Con15 for 15% off your purchase. Believe me, you'll be ordering more than one.
Welcome to the one and only Comic-Con podcast, your podcast for comic book news, reviews, and comic community drama, with your hosts, Nemesis Prime and Milton the Manimal. Are you listening?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Comic-Con podcast. Some bonus content for you. We are week 2 for KickStarter. Hopefully everyone checked out our bonus episode last week with our buddy James from Mad Love Comics. This week we got the band back together to be talking about a upcoming, actually it just started today. So we're recording this on October the 8th. The Kickstarter just went live, and you'll be hearing this as early as October the 9th. So before we kick it off with our writer friend and what we're going to be talking about today, let's say hello to Zach. Mr. Manimal, how are you today?
What up, man? Doing good. Just doing good. Sorry, last week got a little busy with everything. I wasn't able to jump on with James, but shout out to James from Mad Love Comics. Great dude. Always putting out great content. So if you didn't listen to that episode, make sure you go back, check that one out, and throw some support his way as well. But yeah, we got another great guest today. Another buddy, another friend of ours that's throwing up some good books, some Kickstarter. It's fun, dude. You know, we kind of talking about this real quick. So this is kind of a funny story. We're talking about it behind the scenes, and I was explaining how I had to explain my father-in-law is staying with us right now, and he's an older gentleman, and I had to explain to him like what we were talking about. And I was like, do you know what Kickstarter is? So dumb when I asked, do you know what Kickstarter is? I should have known. Like, I had no idea, right? And so I had to like launch into trying to explain Kickstarter and how it works. And like, do you get your money? If the pledges go through? It's just like, as it went on, I just realized this is a bad choice. I should have just said I was going to record some random shit and made it something up. But no, man, Kickstarter, a lot of stuff coming out this month, a lot of great content, and we always want to support it. So with that,
so we met this gentleman. So I was introduced to this gentleman through Instagram. He he gave me the opportunity. He's like, hey, do you want to review a book? And I said, yeah, what's it about? And it sounded pretty awesome. So I was able to get a digital version of the first 2 issues a while back. We reviewed it, I want to say earlier this year.
Yeah.
Maybe somewhere in the teen episodes. I was trying to find it real quick, but yeah, so we reviewed the book. I thought it was awesome. And then we also met in Baltimore. We actually got a chance to meet Carmen. Carmen.costa is our interviewee tonight. So before we introduce him, I'm going to just tell you right now that we are best friends for the simple fact is this gentleman tagged us in his Instagram post and used the band Thursday as his music reel. And dude, I immediately was just like chills on my arm.
You knew the kind of music we listen to?
I was like, oh my God, bro, like New Jersey's own. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, so, I think you posted something a while back and there was like, or maybe, I don't know, did you go to that show? The Palisade show?
I did not.
I remember you posting something and just being like, oh shit, same person. I got you. Yeah, pretty much, dude. Yeah, I was like a South Jersey scene kid. So
Carmen, welcome to the Comic-Con podcast. Pleasure to have you on. So again, let's kind of tell people a little bit about yourself before we get into the Kickstarter. Give us a little background of yourself, and because you're not a full-time writer right now, so you're doing a lot of other stuff.
Yeah. So I guess God, it's so cliche. I've been a writer forever. Right, like kind of always trying to get published and doing things, but and to double down on that cliche, full-time English teacher up through honestly last year, and I recently got hired as a reading specialist. So now I work in elementary schools with 3rd and 4th graders, working on like reading recovery and things along those lines. But yeah, so I started like trying to get published and doing the author thing probably when I was like 25, and I'm 40 now. And I had written just kind of like book after book, just trying to figure it out because there is a lot of a lot of work that needs to be done. You know, I look back, I'm like, why did I never get published? I'm like, oh, that's why, dude, because it wasn't any good. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I look at some of that stuff, and I'm my own worst critic in a lot of ways. So I was writing, it was like right before the pandemic. I had this idea for Proctor, and it started as a book, and it ended up being a 300-page book. It took me almost 2 years to write and edit and draft. And then it was summertime. I needed extra money. My local comic shop was hiring. I walked in. My brother was there because we go to the same store. And my brother, I guess they had asked him, and he looked at me when I walked in. He was like, I can't do it, but he can. So I pretty much, they offered me the job on the spot. So I've been working, like, I consider myself part-time. Like, I'm like maybe 8 hours a week, like on a great week. You know what I mean? So I do like 2 4-hour shifts. I was working one night and I'm looking around. I'm like, damn, I think this would work better as a comic. And that was pretty much how it started. So that was, man, I want to say the winter of maybe 22.
Okay.
Yeah. Winter
Not too long ago. Pretty recent. I mean, that's really not winter 22. I mean, it's probably seems like a long time for you, but I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, it's pretty time frame.
Yeah. If you ask anybody who knows me, I don't have an off switch. I don't drink because I have too much fun. I pretty much go 110 miles an hour with everything that I do. So, you know, I started like looking for my team the winter of 22, I believe. I found Ricardo through, you know, happenstance in the universe on Facebook. And then it took us probably like 8 months to get everything. Like, he had things he was working on anyway. So it took us probably 8 or 9 months. And then October of 23, the issue 1 Kickstarter dropped this time last year. And then it came out officially in December, and we've kind of just been like hitting it pretty hard.
Yeah, you, Ricardo, and Marcus as the colors. The art's awesome. You know, from people that know us.
Yeah,
I love the art. Zach's a story guy, but to be honest, like the first issues that I got to read, and I know Zach picked up some stuff at Baltimore. You know, the side stories. So, you know, let's kind of get into this. So, other than what's starting today, or what has started for Proctor #3, give us the idea, give us the background for the people that, you know, why they should be picking up, give us the synopsis of.
Yeah. So, you know, imagine if your favorite vampire slayer or demon hunter had a drinking problem and a toxic relationship with her mom. That's pretty much how that story starts. And mom's a famous witch, dad's a famous demon hunter who passed away when she was younger. She's a 27-year-old with an art history degree. She can't find a job, doesn't want to move back in with mom. So she starts hunting demons to make ends meet. She's not great at it, and calamity ensues. The idea was kind of born out of, I like supernatural stuff. You know, I've always kind of just thought vampires, werewolves, all that stuff was cool. And I loved, this might make some people cringe, but like one of my favorite.
I'm excited about this. I'm excited to hear what's about ready to come out.
Well, because people take this like,
yeah, of course.
So one of my favorite supernatural films of all time is Constantine, and I know some people. So some people get like weird about it. They're like, well, you know, you know how people get, but
well, you're fully whatever you want to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, please. Yeah, go.
Whatever you want to say, you can say.
This is a safe place where you can shit on things and support things on this channel. Yeah, dude,
that's my favorite. So, you know, I was looking around. I'm like, well, I would love to do something like that, but that was already done, right? Like, I didn't want to like lean into that too far, and you look around, and at the same time, I was teaching Catcher in the Rye at the time, and that Holden Caulfield sort of like everything sucks narrative was like super fresh in my mind. And he's a character that I hated when I first read, and now 15, almost 20 years later, I kind of like love for almost the same reasons why I hated him to begin with. But
because you understand him more as you get older too, right? And your life changes.
100%. So, you get to the end of this thing, and I'm like, I'm looking at Holden Caulfield, I'm looking at Constantine, and then women in my life are some of the funniest people I know. And they are never like any of the hunters or demon slayers that I see on television. Like, I don't, whether it's Underworld or, we'll go one step, we'll sidestep a bit, not a demon hunter, but a character like Lara Croft. Like, all of these women are like really well put together. They have it all figured out. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a chosen one. Like, we meet her in the show and she's already like pretty good at what she does. She's a teenager. And I was like, I just want, like, what if I was a demon hunter in my 20s? Well, I would be an absolute mess. But then, like, okay, well, there aren't any women figures that are like complete shitheads.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I just was like, that's what I want to do. I want to lean into like this girl who's a mess. She doesn't want to be she doesn't even really want to be good at what she does. She just wants to be fine. And that's another part of the book that will eventually kind of like, definitely if I can get another, issue 7 through 12 and that whole thing, like this idea of like, you don't have to save the world. You could just be good enough. Like, you could just be fine. It's okay to be average and just want to exist and hang out with your friends and that sort of thing. So, that was kind of what I'm really leaning into is her averageness in some instances. As the series goes on, it will be more apparent that she's not really, it's not that she's not cut out for it. She doesn't have a choice really in some instances, given the circumstances and how the story goes. But, yeah, I just wanted her to be like a messy shithead who just kind of now has to save her mom,
It kind of has the vibes too, where she's like, it's almost like the kid who had like rich parents, right? Like she's a bit entitled, right? She's like, oh, this is the life. Like, this is just, I'm just good at this naturally. I'm supposed to do this kind of type thing. And it's almost like silver spoon aspect in like a weird, like demon hunter, right? Like, it's not like the same as your parents gave you a ton of money. He gave you like a demon hunter history, but
yeah,
she kind of has that, I don't know, I'm not like obnoxiousness to it in a way where she's just like, this is the life, kind of like,
yeah. She's not
cavalier.
like completely likable in a lot of instances,
which makes her likable, right?
What'd you say?
Which makes her likable, it makes her like almost like I like what you're saying about like the Laura Crofts and all the badasses and like the Celine from Underworld. Like, you're just like, oh wow, they're so badass, right? But like, those aren't real people. You know what I mean? Like, real people are messed up and real people have problems. And so it almost makes someone more likable as more jacked up they are a little bit. So more relatable, right?
Yeah.
So,
that's what I was going for sure.
Yeah. Well, you nailed it.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
So this month you have the Kickstarter for issue 3. And what's perfect about this, and we were kind of talking about this pre-show, is that even though if you haven't read Carmen's first 2 books, you actually have a chance to pick up all 3 of them, as well as the side story stuff. So with the Kickstarter, and I think this is a perfect thing, because even though I only have it, you gave me a PDF when I got to review it. I was reading it on a PDF file, but I actually now pre-ordered, the first 2 issues plus the new issue. And then you have these 2 little side stories that is completely separate as well. So kind of explain, how those are involved in these first 3 issues. Like, where do they take place in the storyline?
So, the stories. So, like I said, this was originally a 300-page book, and I had learned very quickly the financial frameworks of storytelling by way of a comic book. Kind of set this. You don't get to live outside of that world, right? Artists cost money, and I don't negotiate. I respect the artist for whatever rate they have. Like, either I can pay it or I can't pay it, and hopefully I can, because you know what I mean. So doing that, I started to realize, like, okay, how many issues can I afford? But also in thinking about pitching the book, there's also this idea of like, well, from what I'm hearing in the research that I've done, publishers are way more interested in picking up a 4-issue or 6-issue miniseries than they are an ongoing story. So I look because it's just it's a big financial ask on their end to like they don't have time to convince a consumer that there's going to be a payoff in issue 15, right? Like I'm not I'm not a popular author yet where I can just say, oh, it's going to be 30 issues and people buy into it. So with all that being said, after looking at the budget and then realizing like what I can do and what might get picked up, initially I was a spoiled brat about it and I was like, it has to be 12 issues. But then you start chipping away and then you're like, oh, wait a minute, it can be 8 issues. And then I think Ricardo was just like, what about 6, man? Like, I think we can do 6. So that's where the 6 issues came from. It's like the most general plot arc, right? That you get. The short stories were born out of chapters in the book that I absolutely loved. And it was fun for me because like I really got to still be like a traditional, narrative writer in a way. And I get to sort of flex my muscles there a little bit. Hopefully people dig them. But I wanted to keep it interesting. So I also hired artists to do like the interior splash pages. Like, so if you're reading it, maybe every 1, 2, or 3 pages, there's like some splash ink there that you can see. So I got so fortunate. Rafa Luero is now the artist on Dazzler for Marvel, and he is an absolute boss. That for my short story, This One Time in Italy, before he got picked up by Marvel, saw his art for Ric Flair's Secret Agent, the book that came out in Scout. So I emailed him and I was like, hey man, like I love your art. I pitched him the idea. And that's the other thing that I also do. Like I pitch everybody. I'm like, listen, if you only come on board if this is something that you vibe with, like if you think this is something that's cool and you want to do, let's do it. And I pitched him. I sent him, the issues, and he liked it enough to come on board. So he did those interior inks, and then for the other short story, The Funeral, this absolute savage from Italy, Gerardo Gambone, he's a young kid who just nails it, man. Like I loved working with him. He came on to do the interior inks, and he did the cover as well for The Funeral. And it's a different style too. Like I wanted to, with each short story I do want to change the style of the interior inks. So like so for This One Time in Italy, that short story, the inks are pretty traditional. And then for The Funeral, the inks kind of lean a little like manga, anime-ish. Each story can be read independently. Like you don't really need to know much about the story. You can read them. You could buy issues 1, 2, and 3, and then read both short stories, and you're fine. You could read issue 1, then read the short story, and then read issue 2, and then read the short story. You can be fine. They just shed light on Sam's bit larger world. And you get a better understanding of the cloth that she comes from. Because I don't think I can do it in the 6 issues the way that I want to do it. I feel like I owe Sam too much, if that makes sense, because in a way she really is me, and the other characters really are like love letters to people that are in my life that I genuinely care about. And I wanted to do right by all of the things. So for anybody who's just is looking for something a little different and doesn't mind a little bit of reading, I think each short story is, I think the first short story is 24 pages and the second short story is 28. So
yeah, I'm looking at them right here, and just to kind of describe them, like Carmen said, about every other page, there's a little bit of little art here and there, and then it's kind of like a little, I don't know, novelette.
yeah,
Like a little bit. I mean, it's obviously not like a novella, but like a novelette. I don't know if I just made up that word or not, but
it's fine. It's
yeah,
perfect.
it's like a little short story, and it reads good. It's contained, very much so. So, like you said, you can read these and just not. You don't really necessarily. You should be reading Proctor, but you don't have to. You could go into these, and they're kind of just like, I don't know, little snapshots of the character and different stories. So it's cool, man. I really dig it. I'm a big novel reader as well.
Okay.
And so, like, don't get me wrong, I love comics, but a lot of times I do find myself just reading past the artwork. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
could be like when I'm reading like X-Men and like the shit that you don't really have to like read, like pay attention to. I'm a bubble reader, man. I don't go to like bubble to bubble to bubble, and I'll just like side picture the art in the background. So like something like this is kind of like really right up my alley as well, because it is kind of still comic booky, you know. And but yeah, it's cool. I think it's really cool. A really cool idea. And to let
Thank
you
you.
tell a little side story without bogging down the clear, concise story. And Justin and I talk about that a lot, you know, how like comic books make it tight, make it a nice, tight story, a nice, tight arc. So, but I think it's cool. It also allows you to, you know, stretch your wings a little bit on the
Yeah.
story.
Thank you. And like so I have to just give credit where credit's due. I'm not comparing myself to him at all because this guy is probably, I think, one of the best at what he does. But there's a novelist. His name's Tim O'Brien. He wrote a book that's taught in many, many high schools across the country called The Things They Carried. It's a Vietnam War story, but not really a Vietnam War story. The setting very much so is Vietnam, but it plays around with like time. It's one of my favorite books of all time, if not aside from Moby Dick. If not, it's probably my favorite book of all time. And it plays around with perspective in really interesting ways, and that's what I wanted to do with these short stories too, where even in the short story, like things aren't completely linear, where you're like you're in Sam's like stream of conscious, and she's reflecting on something that she's reflecting on right now, and then 20 years ago, or not 20, she's reflecting on right now, and then 5 years ago, and then she's maybe thinking about the way things should be, and I really love doing that. So, you know, I definitely took a page out of his playbook. So if anybody likes the short stories that I'm writing, I promise you Tim O'Brien does it way better, and The Things They Carried is absolutely where you should start. So
Nice. Yeah, I like just kind of go back as far as the the 6-issue miniseries. We talk about books. Sometimes like we'll read a book and we're like, oh, this is the first issue of a 6-issue miniseries. And you have that in mind where you know where it's gonna go, right? You're like, all right, it's gonna wrap up in a 6-issue thing. So I understand when you're like, oh, publishers don't want like a 30 or 15 issue thing. They want to kind of cut it shorter because then it'll get picked up and then you go from there. So I'm glad that you're gonna have a beginning, middle, and end. And this is perfect jumping on point for the people that haven't picked up the first 2 issues, who don't know about it, who, everybody who's listening, you should pick it up because again, you get a best chance. You get the 1, 2, and 3 to really see where Samantha is. Question for you, Carmen, is Samantha growing up here in New Jersey, is it kind of a love letter to everything about you, about music? Because again, she's, you have kind of the punk rocker esque, both in yourself and what you could see from Samantha on page.
yeah, so I was definitely a scene kid growing up, and for when I first had Sam's idea in my head, I initially maybe entertained the idea of her being in a band, but I was like, I just felt like her just being it says more a little bit if she's just a fan, right? Because I feel
Mhm.
like the fans are really the culture of the world that we came from. So it's definitely a love letter to the scene. I do try not to take it too seriously. Like, so the Eater T-shirt. So there's a fictional vampiric straight edge hardcore band that exists in the universe. I printed shirts for it. The second short story, The Funeral, kind of she goes to an Eater show, but like even her mom kind of makes fun of her because like it doesn't to be a vampiric straight edge band, like that doesn't make sense. Vampires can't drink booze anyway or do drugs, but does that mean they just don't drink blood? Like it's like, okay, I try to make sure that we're not taking ourselves too seriously.
Yeah.
But even that, like, it's a love letter to just counterculture in general. And then in issue 3, we get a little bit of Philadelphia. So we get Love Park. We get a very famous cheesesteak landmark. The next character that we meet, who will join the team, is born and raised from West Philadelphia. So you know, it's a city that I just love to death. And one of the reasons why half the story takes place in Italy is just because, you know, I've just spent so much time there now at this point, and I just I don't know, that these places like just mean so much to me. Like when I hired Ricardo and I was telling him that the end of issue 1, Sam finds herself in Verona, and like I want you to their Christmas in that city is extremely festive. And one of the things that he had said was like it just made him happy to be able to draw Verona during Christmas time. And it's like things like that. Like I feel like sometimes, and it's because it takes too much time and energy to do. But comics don't spend a lot of time with setting in some instances. And again, I mean, sometimes you got to draw these panels and you don't have time for these larger things. But I really wanted to make sure that these cities were alive. You know what I mean? And I think Ricardo just knocks it out of the park.
Yeah, you
sure.
show the culture. That's the
Yeah.
best thing.
Yeah.
So, Zach, I know you have some questions, but real quick, Gino or Pats?
Dude, so I'm a Pats guy,
Okay.
but I know I have to admit I'm embarrassed to say this. I still haven't had a John's roast pork cheesesteak, and I know I need to. This is also going to be controversial. I don't like Jim's at all, really.
Okay.
I was a Tony Luke's guy forever. I know there's something else now because they got sold and they changed names. But I've found a couple winners in South Jersey. So yeah, but Geno's is just it's too chunky. I don't know if that makes any sense.
All right. For the people that don't know what we're talking about cheesesteak places in Philly, like the big. I'm a Carmine's guy. And,
I've never been.
Oh, that's in the food, whatever it's called over there in Philly.
Is it Reading? It's in Reading Terminal.
Yeah, it's in Reading Terminal. That cheesesteak is banging. So
the crazy thing about Philly, just real quick about cheesesteaks, is it's crazy that so many people get it wrong. Given so many places that get it right anymore, it's just that blows my mind. But anyway, sorry, I digress.
Okay, I was curious when you were. I guess since we're gonna go to Philly now, where we're gonna go. So
it may or may not be a place that perhaps looks like Pat's.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And just the, like you said, the created bands in this universe. I bought the Slay All Day shirt at Baltimore, and I wore it the other day, and someone's like, "Oh, is that a band?" And I was like, "Well, kind of is, I guess." In like
it is now,
world.
dude.
Yeah, it is now. So, but yeah, I love that shirt. It's just a cool, and you can there are bundles on the Kickstarter for people that are listening. So go check it out. There's tons of there's sticker bundles. There's a bunch of shirts, and they're really cool shirts. They're actually, other than I saw the Eater shirt for, that band, I'm like, damn, I kind of want that as just like a shirt too. So
yeah, I wanted, when I made so I was a big merch guy. Like I still buy band, most of my t-shirts are just band merch.
Strong, yeah.
At 40 years old, most of my shirts are just band t-shirts. Mainly because nobody sells music anymore because they don't get paid. So I'm like, well, I'll just give you $25 and then now I got a t-shirt. But nothing annoys me more when, and I guess I would get annoyed when bands do this too, but more so with comic book stuff. It's like the t-shirt is just the cover, the comic book cover. It's like they just got a single print of the comic book cover on the chest of the t-shirt. And that's just, I'm always like, man, you can
just wearing the book.
More. Yeah. So I want to do something a little creative.
That's cool.
Zach?
Yeah. So, okay. So in the book, we kind of see, the supernatural aspect, and we see vampires, we got demons, we have magic, werewolves. What all are we kind of looking at? I mean, we're looking at all the supernatural spectrum here, right?
Yes.
Without giving a story away, what can we tease here?
So
it's a little bit of everything so far.
Because I also have a special place in my heart for New York Penn Station. You will get a quasi New York Penn Station place, and you will see in an amazing sort of half-page splash the world that Sam is actually getting herself into. So I don't want to give too much away, but I would say all bets are off. Anything that's ever been supernatural in your mind or fantasy is pretty much fair game in this world. And that's something that eventually will come into play. Again, I really want to go into more issues. Like if I'm, if I get the privilege to go into an issue 7 or issue 12, this idea of Sam in her mind thinking that she was just like I'm just a street level slayer. Like I don't do dimensions. Like I'm a street level guy. I don't want to deal with any. I want to stop a mugging, right? Like let's keep it easy. And all of a sudden she realizes that she's way out of her depth because the world is way bigger than she really expected. And it also shows just kind of how sheltered she was, you know what I mean? Like if her only job was just to not embarrass her mom, and then her mom was like, well, I just need you to join my coven. And this is this like narrow focus of the way the world works. We zoom out in issue 3 a little bit and you see just how big the world is.
So, I mean, you got demons.
Yes.
Any idea or can you say anything angelic might show up at some point? Do we get the opposite of demons? You got demons, you got to have a reverse, right? Sometimes.
I haven't explored the angel thing yet.
Okay.
I do I've entertained the idea just in like some notes of like angels being assholes. That's the only thing that's kind of like where my starting point will be. But you're going to get like orcs, elves, goblins, specters. You're going to get a dragon that is responsible for transporting you through space and time. It's going to be as fantastic as I think you can imagine. My hope is like people are moving through it and they're like, oh shit, oh that's a minotaur. Oh, you know what I mean?
Yeah. The vampire girlfriend with like her familiar boyfriend human. I mean, it's kind of just like, it's also cool how casual is the right word, like casual it is too. It's just like, oh yeah, what's up? I'm like her familiar boyfriend. It's not even like there's not a lot of like explanation that's needed. You're just like, oh, this is weird, but it makes sense, I guess. Like,
yeah,
I think it's cool. It's so like fantastical in the real world, and it just is. You're just run with it. You're like, okay, I guess that's where we're at. So
yeah, I wanted, and I kind of stole that from Constantine. Like the way I feel like some of these comics do it really well, where you just kind of have to. Actually, I think who does the best, and it's not a Hellblazer story, but like Hickman just does it where it doesn't matter whatever you just have to just be like, of
it's
course,
just there, yeah.
Right, like reading Gods. I don't know if you guys read.
Oh yeah.
You read Gods and you're like, yeah, I guess that's how that works.
That's where we're at. Yeah, right. And the good thing about Gods was, don't get me wrong, I like dialogue, but the classic Hickman's like, here's 4 pages of exposition. That's just like, holy crap, dude! I gotta like, it's almost like reading the old Marvel handbooks in the middle of your book. Like
it gets tough. Black Monday Murders still makes me feel like a moron.
What was the oh man, he did another one. Oh man.
Is that like late night television, or is that the television one?
Oh, that Hickman did?
Yeah.
Oh, what was it? Decorum?
Decorum.
Oh, Decorum was also.
I was like, am I dumb? I might be dumb. I might be dumb.
I remember when we talked about that.
It also had like, I think it also suffered from like publication issues, like time frame. So I was like, dude, I've already like forgotten all that, and I can go back and reread this at this point.
It's crazy. And again, I am not Jonathan Hickman, but after reading, the more I've been exposed to like certain storytelling, the more I'm realizing I kind of have just things that authors do that I like. And when I see some of that stuff, I'm like, oh, maybe I could pull that off, or maybe. And that was kind of living in my head with how much do I need to explain? Because with the book, I have all this runway. You know what I mean? Where I can spend time. Like I would love to do a chapter just about Irish Tom and Sophia. Because we're going to learn about their history within the 6 issues. I think issue 5 we get more context. But I kind of, after you learn kind of how they met, I would love to do just a miniseries spinoff with just those two from
Hell yeah.
150 years ago.
That's always an awesome idea.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Nice. Well, I think it's been an absolute great time. Carmen, thank you so much for
Dude,
popping
thanks for
on
having
here.
me.
Dude, this was we could probably talk all night, but like we want to keep these things short and sweet and make sure people get all the information they can. You're always welcome back on here, but let's before we get out of here, before we kick you off for the night, real quick again, Proctor 1, 2, and 3 available now on Kickstarter.
Correct.
It just went live. You have about 30 days ago, which is perfect. Goals 4,000. We're at 1620 people, so let's get Carmen to the 4,000. Let's kind of push it way over that. And I think the first two you did really well. I remember on the first one because I was looking back at some stuff. But first Samantha, her future, just kind of real quick in a nutshell, bring it all together. If people that are listening for the first time that don't know Samantha, sell it to them. Sell it to them so hard that they need to go out and do this as soon as I post this tomorrow.
Oh man. So am I doing I can do the pitch all over again.
The elevator pitch.
The elevator pitch all over. All right, imagine
Super
if your
quick,
favorite vampire slayer or demon hunter had a drinking problem and a toxic relationship with her mom. That's where the story starts. Mom's a famous witch. Dad is a famous demon hunter who passed away when she was younger. She's a 27-year-old with an art history degree who can't make ends meet. She doesn't want to move back in with mom, so she starts demon hunting to pay the bills, and calamity ensues.
Hell yeah.
One last thing I just want to say. This is not just a fun thing hobby for me, and I just sometimes I think we look at creative sometimes and we just think like, oh, this is just something that they want to do because they think comics are cool. This is probably one of the most important creative things I've ever done. I have put a lot of myself, my time, my money on the line for people who think comics are too expensive. Trust me, I promise you there's a good reason for that. Each issue, I was just talking to the owner of the comic book store today. We were talking about just the business side of all this. Each issue cost me roughly $10,000 if you look at every inch of my spending, which unfortunately I have to do at the end of the year. And we're making great headway. But every dollar matters. Every dollar counts. And if you do get a copy of the book, please read the notes at the beginning of each issue. That is part of Sam's story because it's part of my story. And I think if you want to really live in the world that I'm trying to build, read those notes too. So thank you so much, guys, for giving me the opportunity to speak and be on here, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh,
yeah, definitely. And I know this past weekend you were at a comic shop here in New Jersey. Do you have anything planned for the next coming months, where people may be able to find you?
Yeah. So if you're in South Jersey, I'm doing like a witches picnic market type thing right in Pittman, New Jersey. That's this weekend. The following 2 weekends, I am off, but then I kind of hit the ground running pretty hard. I'm doing Dark Side through Trenton Punk Rock Flea Market.
Oh hell yeah, my buddy sets up there.
Oh dude, it's so if you live in Jersey and you haven't been to the Trenton Punk Rock Flea Market, you are missing out on probably one of the greatest days as a consumer, just to go hang, good food, good music, good people. It's awesome. I'm doing Monster Mania at the Greater Philadelphia Expo Center in Oaks. I think that's in November. I'm doing Big Apple Comic-Con or Big Apple Con, which is I believe it's still going to be in the New Yorker hotel right across the street from Penn Station in New York. My Novembers, I've got something every weekend. My goal for the year, I hit it. I wanted to do 24 events over the course of the entire year, and that's kind of the way I'm rounding this thing out. So message me, ask me where I'm going, follow me on Instagram at Carmen.costa.writes. I always post where I'm going. My newsletter, I have an update at the bottom that tells you where I'm going to be too.
Sweet. Thank you.
Real quick, one last question. What do your students think about it?
So I got out. So I remember. So I switched lanes mid-year last year. So issue 1, kids knew about it. I'm never the type of I never want to push it ever. So if kids find out by accident, great. Like
He leaves it on the table.
Oops.
Oh,
whoops.
what's in
What
this?
is
Oh,
In the middle of their
fun.
book report. Wow, how'd that get there?
Like I can say that some of my students backed the Kickstarter for issue 2, which I thought was really cool,
That is cool.
especially after like other teachers have the comic. So some of the other teachers were like, hey, did you know Mr. Costa had a comic? And it kind of went that way. So kids would tell me like, hey, Mrs. So-and-so had your book. I saw it.
Yeah.
You know, it looks pretty cool. So it was cool to see that on their own terms. In some ways, the kids found it, thought it was cool, thought it was meaningful, and then made the extra step to kind of back it. So it's been neat. The elementary school kids, I haven't said anything about. My colleagues, some of my colleagues know, but what'd you say?
It's a little adult maybe for the elementary.
Yeah, like my thing is like, and I don't want to have to. Some people have been like, hey, you should do like a club. And I was like, absolutely not. Am I ever? No. I don't want to tell these kids about any of this stuff. So,
but you know, you do have like it's really interesting though, because you do have like an avenue, because we always talk about, and everyone knows, the comic book industry is rife or littered with 30-year-old, 40-year-old men, and we're not getting a lot of new blood. So you do kind of have like an avenue there where that could be explored to like maybe you get kids into comics with something like this. But it is a really weird idea of like, this is also your job, and like pushing your book and like,
the book is super dark. I would like to eventually explore children's book, children's comic, like YA, in terms of like Lumberjanes does it really well. Amulet is another early reader, or like mid-level reader. Amulet is probably the Harry Potter of this generation for sure. So like I've been playing around with that. Marvel finally has early like leveled readers that they've released that I don't know why they're not pushing more. Marvel, if you're listening to this and you need someone to sell your books, let me know because I can do it.
It's a lot of digital stuff for them, Marvel too.
Yeah.
It's weird. At least DC, they put out that they started that like a year or two ago. DC started doing that YA, almost like a digest book. Of whatever it is, you know, Zatanna, Batman, Superman, like stuff like that.
Yep, and some of them do it really well. Some of them don't, because you could tell like they're not. They say that it's for a 10-year-old, but some of them it's not written for a 10-year-old. It's written by somebody who doesn't have a 10. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't land, where a 10-year-old might open it up and it's really just too wordy. So it's like the vocabulary is tough, and they're like, "Oh, I'm supposed to like comics," and I open this up and it's too wordy, and I feel maybe I don't feel intelligent because I can't read this. And they close the book and they get turned off. Whereas like Dogman, Captain Underpants is way more approachable because the guys that wrote it kind of had a better understanding of like grade school reading.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I like that a lot. No, that's perfect. That's actually
reading coach hat on.
No, it's very interesting, man. Like I said, there's like this little. You have a pocket there that, you know, most people in the community, the creatives in the community, aren't really in that genre. You're kind of like a good bridge right there. So there's opportunity. It's just, how do you make it happen, right? And organic, because you can't force things on kids because they buck, right? So
they smell it a mile away.
Yeah, dude. Oh, it's in your book report. Hey, check out this QR code that goes right to my book.
So here's one last. I have one last question, because I thought about this because my wife asked me this, and you know, like, are you going to be giving away your book as at Halloween for trick or treating? Because like my wife asked me, she's like, well, you know, you have your variant for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I was like, maybe with some kids I'd give away the Turtles book, but at the same time, we're making money. I'm like, I'm not trying to give away. You never know. You know, I could give a couple to some older kids or younger kids. You never know.
Man, honestly, dude, if they weren't so damn expensive, I definitely would.
Right? That's how I feel.
Bro, yeah, I'm like, I'm literally handing out a $5 bill every time I hand out that comic.
Maybe wait till like 10 years down the road when you just have like a box, maybe still, unfortunately. And you're like, well, at this point, let's just give them out.
Yeah, I will have bigger problems on my hands if 10 years from now I still got boxes of these books.
Too good. Well, again, people, follow Carmen at Carmen.costa.writes at Instagram. You can check out, again, Proctor we're gonna have all the links will be in the descriptions, whether you're following us on Instagram. You've been seeing our stories. over on the YouTube, Spotify, and also iTunes and everything. So again, Carmen, you're always welcome back. Please, we're definitely going to be talking post this show for some cool stuff. But I'm super excited for this. Again, it just started. Everybody, make sure you go ahead and back Carmen's awesome book. So we'll catch you later in the week for our normally scheduled episode, and then we'll be back with our third part next week for our Kickstartober stuff. So enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Peace out.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Hey, comic book collectors. Do you want to protect what you collect? Do you hate when your comic books slide around in your short box, or you need to turn them sideways just so they don't bend or fall over? Well, look no further than Sidekick Supplies. Their product fits firmly inside your comic box, so you don't need to worry. And not only is their product made in the USA, but also ships free directly to your doorstep. Check out our sponsor, Sidekick Supplies, at sidekicksupplies.com and use the code ComicCom15 for 15% off your purchase. Believe me, you'll be ordering more than one.